for me, a product that just makes your life more beautiful. I mean, it's actually nice to make people's lives more beautiful, but just the aesthetics of it is not interesting enough to me. So I really like to find out the whole history of a product, or if I design something, then to design it with a complete transparent background, so the product's raw materials, that they are completely transparent and I know where they came from and who made them and or who farmed them. So yeah, my mission in the end would be to design a product that is a good product to start with, that is beautiful and that you can use a lot, but that also has a sort of really honest story to it. It's important because if a product can be traced back to its raw materials and the people who made it, you can never be sure if it was made in a proper way. So if the material was found in a proper way, but also the people that made the product, and because like most products that we use are so incredibly cheap, you can almost be sure that there's at least something not right in how it was made. So that's why I'm really interested in making these processes transparent. Because if it's transparent, you can also see who made what and how and under what circumstances. I think it's really sad that these really horrible disasters have to happen for people to understand that our products are made under really bad circumstances, that it's actually not possible to buy a t-shirt for €5 and for it to have a really nice story behind it. So then thousands of people have to die before somebody says, oh, so apparently we have to change the circumstances. And then the companies are still really very stubborn to change things because they think people will only buy cheap stuff. And for part of that, I think that's true as well. So that's why I really like to make these transparent product, but it's also really complicated. And for instance, I make a tea towel of 100% flax, which is as locally produced as possible in Europe. But yeah, it costs like 20 times as much as an average linen tea towel that comes from, I mean, that's produced in China. So it's in that way, the things that I do sometimes are more like an example rather than a real product, even though I produce it in quite high numbers for my sake. Oh, I never dreamed of being a designer, but if I look back at who I was when I was like 9 or 8, I always, whenever I had to make something in kindergarten or in school, I would really, really do my very, very best, because I really always wanted to be good at it or do my best. So I think looking back, I always had a sort of, I just really liked making things. But at the end of high school, I once went to this open day at the Design Academy, and I just completely fell in love with this school. And not because I wanted to be a designer, but I just wanted to spend time there. So, and I think it stayed like that until my graduation, because when I graduated, I still didn't really know exactly what kind of a designer I wanted to be. So I just found out along the way. It was taught at school in a way, in a sort of very, in the way that you would really look into a material and work with the material, and also conceptually. But the way that I sort of sometimes feel more like a journalist or something, really unraveling the story, I didn't really learn that at school, and I think I found that out along the way after I graduated. It just kind of happened. Yeah, I don't really know where it came from. I just figured out that if I work in this way, it's the only way for me to design something, because I don't think about something and an image comes into my head. It just doesn't work that way. But if I just follow the whole process of meeting people who make the thing, or the people that give you a project, or farmers, or just like slowly along the way, I figure out what something has to look like or how it's made, so I don't really know how to do it any other way. I have an idea vaguely, which is really far away, and then I have to walk on this road, which can have very small side roads and paths, and you just have to trust that you will get to this point in the end, but you don't know exactly how. If I do it that way, then it works, but it can never be like a sort of easy straight line. I'm searching for something that surprises me, or something that I think is like a sort of handle that you can take as a design start. So, but you never know in advance what that is. So I'm always trying to be really open and look in every corner of a factory where I am, because the idea could be in anything. It could be something somebody says, or something that's somewhere on a table, or so it's a difficult thing to explain, but it's all about just being really open to what a story is, and not to what you think that something is in advance, but to just sort of figure it out along the way. The sheep was my other graduation project, and the idea behind it was that I felt at that time, which is 10 years ago, that often you would buy something or a piece of clothing and it would just feel like really as if there was no value in it, as if you could easily like toss it away. And then I thought it would be nice to design something that would actually carry a kind of value, so you wouldn't easily throw it away. And I thought, what gives something value? And then I thought it's knowing something about it. So who makes it? Where did it come from? And then I thought, if you would design a sweater, which you would actually know the sheep, it's a kind of marketing story for the thing itself, without having to make up a fake marketing story that shows, for instance, like a really flashy basketball player promoting a product that is actually made by really poor people in a faraway country. So I thought it would be nice to have an object that would tell its own story very clearly without having to make up anything. So that's how I came up with making sweaters from one sheep. And then over the years I did a lot of attempts to make this into a larger project. So not just 7 sheep in a row, but to really work with the whole flocks and creating sweaters that are made from these sheep in an industrial way, because I don't want it to be like sort of handicraft project. But I found out it's almost impossible to make it any bigger. So it's very much in the end a concept and not an industrial product. Yeah, the last attempt that I did was a flock of 25 merino sheep in the Netherlands, whose wool was not used for anything. And I made identical sweaters of each sheep. They're like, the yarn is made in an industrial way, and the sweaters are 3D knitted, so it's completely mechanized process. But the sweaters were all different, and they're the same breed of sheep, so the color is the same. But so the nice thing I thought about that is that the quality of life of the sheep translates into the project or into the product. So if the sheep has a bad year, then you see it in the quality of the sweater, which I thought is conceptually really nice. It would be nice if our products would become better if the stories behind it are better. But to actually realize that in another scale is really complicated, I think. The pig actually came from a talk in a bar with my best friend, and we were talking about what if you would follow a cow and find out what was made of one cow. And at the time we were like, yeah, if you would find maybe 20 things, that would already be interesting. And then I started to look into this more seriously, and I talked to this lady who was working at a really big meat factory, and she said, cows are interesting, but you should actually look at a pig, because from pigs there are all these sort of high-tech gelatines that are used, and at the time there was mad cow's disease, so cows weren't used for that. But then I thought about it more, and I thought that's a really sort of practical reason to look at a pig. But in the Netherlands, if you are driving around the country or in the train, you see lots of cows everywhere, but you never ever see a pig outside. you only see a pig if you're in the highway and there's a truck passing with. But then I found out that there are, I think, 12 million pigs in the Netherlands, which is a crazy amount because there are 16 million people. And then it made it even more strange that you never actually see one. So then I thought it's nice to do a project about an animal that is so there, but that is completely absent at the same time. So that was my second reason to start following a pig. So yeah, then I just started digging for 3 years. I was totally surprised by a lot of things, and also by actually being able to find it, and that some people were really open, and people that you think would be really secretive were very open, and people that you would expect to be open were very secretive. So all that sort of things or thoughts that I had in advance sometimes turned out to be completely upside down. So it was a really nice project in that way as well. I think design can help to actually explain something in an easier way or in a better way. So with the pig, I really tried to make a book that would explain how this one animal is used for so many different things, but I wanted to explain it in a way so that people could actually make up their own minds. So I wanted to make something that is really clear in its content and that doesn't take sides either. So, but that is so clear that somebody who sees it can make up their own mind. And I think, for instance, politicians will always try to make you look in their way or their perspective, which in a way I think makes it so often that you don't fully believe what they're saying. So I really wanted to make something that is not my opinion, but that is something that you can make your own opinion about. Which of course is also steering people in a way, but in that sense I think it's different when a designer looks at something than a politician or a journalist, which doesn't make the one better than the other. It's just a different way of looking at something. In a way, I'm just like anybody else. I mean, I also need a computer and a telephone. But what's difficult is that I have this sort of extra consciousness of things and where they come from. It's just, I think for anybody who has a profession, you just know a lot of stuff about the things that you do. And because I think so much about transparency, going through a big store just gives me a headache, because you can see all these cheap products and then I think about all these people making them and throwing them away, and so it just makes it really complicated to shop. But I am not better than anybody else, because I also, live in this world. It's hard to be a really good consumer, I think. Even if you are very conscious and know a lot about production processes, it's still complicated. Well, if I would be able to make an alternative product to the normal product that is not produced in the good way, or then that would already be enough for me. Because I found out maybe 5 or 10 years ago I would have given you a really complicated answer, but after like 10 years I figured out that this really simple thing of making something that is transparent, good product, produced in a nice way, that's already a really complicated task, and that's really nice if I could just be able to do those things.